What's up, coin traders? Thanks for joining me for the show. Looking at ICP, Internet Computer ICP on that ticker. Not necessarily the best setup right now, especially after rejecting from about the $14 level. So two pretty big down days, especially after we had very nice bullish green bullish engulfing candles. Now had two bearish candles blowing below that. And obviously just started the current daily candle, so not too much data on that. But with this setup right now, have more or less broken structure, but we haven't actually set a new daily lower low yet, since we are looking at a low of about 1029. So if we can actually pull back and see a new lower low, then that would break the structure, confirm that the daily uptrend is done, and now we are going to be in a daily downtrend since we are making lower highs and lower lows. But the other caveat is that if we can hold this 1029 level, actually hold a higher low, then the most likely scenario and possibility of an outcome would actually be a tightening range, meanwhile allowing some of these exponential moving averages to catch up, tighten up once again, and then from there we could continue the next leg of upside. So that's probably one of the more bullish cases in this instance, is if we can go into longer term daily consolidation. And so that's kind of why it's extremely important to be eyeing where this low level is. And that's why when we actually look at where the potential price for ICP can be coming in, we actually need to be holding this level pretty well, because otherwise then we will be looking at seeing additional tests of downside and finding support along just below the $10 level. So we would be looking at 989. Obviously, I think we probably would find some sort of support around the $10 psychological level. So this is going to be our very big target zone from about the low where we had of 1029 down to about 990. So if we combine that with the fact that this 50-period exponential moving average probably would roll up at that point, it probably seems reasonable to assume we would be finding support around that level. Additionally, if we actually look left here, you can see that we actually found support above the 50-period EMA. So we know that this has been a very big zone and it actually hasn't been tested yet. So that's why we could ultimately end up seeing a pullback down to that level. But we know that these exponential moving averages have been an extremely nice guide to the upside, and they have helped maintain that nice daily uptrend. So now I do want to pull up the volume here, talk about volume going on, because one of the things that I do want to point out is that we actually have seen a complete taper off in the volume peaks. So we did get our volume peak on the 16th of December, so almost a month ago. We saw 6.749 million ICP come in and get bought, which is why we had that extremely nice bullish candle to the upside. Ever since, just having smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller highs, and yet meanwhile have seen a little bit of a higher price. So if we actually pull up the daily RSI, you can see that this does typically lead to a little bit of bearish divergence. So had our high of RSI not as strong of a move, so we are getting a downtrend on this RSI, yet we did see an uptrend in price. So that does create a little bit of selling pressure. So we do anticipate that that's another reason why we could be looking back again around the $10 zone. So now I do want to flip into the weekly chart, because as you can see, just like we were talking about volume, can see a pretty big taper off in volume and actually saw higher bearish volume coming in for week over week. So a little bit more selling pressure coming in. If we turn on the technicals, RSI and stochastic RSI for these, you can see how we have been overbought for quite some time now. So definitely reasonable to think that we need this RSI to return back to a normal level, especially since zooming out, you can see ever since weekly RSI has been going on, this is the all-time high right now. So it is a good sign for RSI, or excuse me, for ICP right now, but we do know that ultimately, because we actually have this much overbought RSI level for this weekly chart, we are needing to see a pullback, and that goes for the rest of the crypto space crypto-wide too, not just specifically for ICP, especially since we have been doing an extremely good job of running up over the last couple of months or few months. And especially now with the ETF announcement back behind this, not as much to be optimistic and bullish about in terms of upcoming hype and reasons to buy. So a lot of money has already come in, and that's why we're kind of in this indifferent stage, because we could have maintaining of price, but more than likely, I think we're probably going to get some sort of pullback, especially since we have pretty much nonstop rally action for the last few months here. Now, looking down at stochastic RSI, very nice bear cross on this weekly RSI, especially after topping out at the 100 level for the blue and 99 for the orange line. So if we do correlate the stochastic RSI with price action, you can see that every single time we did get up to this level, cross bearish, and actually start to retrace to the downside, it actually did lead to a little bit of a sell-off and then discovering new lower lows. Now, we have been changing the trend on some of the longer term charts, so that's not necessarily as big of a factor right now, And especially since we're so far above these exponential moving averages on this weekly chart, realistically, very nice opportunity to see plenty of structure down below, be able to maintain for support. So I think realistically, we could be looking at several opportunities. $9 first, and that's pretty much going to correlate with the recent consolidation action. Let's actually go ahead and zoom in on this weekly chart a little bit. So as you can see, we did have a very nice back test confirmation of this once we actually broke out. Extremely nice breakout from this exponential moving average resistance. So that's one of the reasons why we're actually looking at the $9 level first. If that does in fact fail, looking left, previous point of resistance coming at 742. Could be looking at a price level actually right around the 820 line, but I'm thinking that more realistically, if we do break 9, we're probably going to be falling down to about the 740 level or so. But if that does fail as well, then we would be looking all the way down to about 650. So those are our very, very, very supportive targets on the downside. I do expect prices to be found somewhere in here, more likely and most realistically, probably around the 750 at the low point. And another reason I say that too is because if we actually look at these exponential moving averages, we're not too far from having a complete bullish cross on this weekly, where we do have 12 on top, 26 is about to make its way up, and then 50 would be staying on the bottom. So a full bullish formation. In that instance, if we do see a pullback and retracement, which is normal and healthy, and honestly to be expected, and if you're not following me over on Twitter or X, definitely drop me a follow. At coin_trades is the handle over there. We do talk about internet computer quite frequently, and we have been talking about how all of crypto has been needing a pullback for a while, especially now that the ETF announcement has been passed. So yeah, anyway, point I'm getting at, especially with these exponential moving averages rolling up based on some of these technical levels as well as price points in the past, I do expect support to be found on a pullback down to about 750 or 742 at the lowest. Now, like we said, that could actually fail, and we would end up seeing prices go down to about 648. But yeah, right now we're still expecting prices to more or less stay sideways unless we actually do end up breaking that low, because otherwise we would be entering a little bit more longer term consolidation. But like I said, I think personally, I would honestly like to see a little bit more of that pullback to retrace and actually hit the 9 and 740 levels. That would also be great opportunities to see a lot of buying the dip pressure and a lot of opportunity to get in for another low position if you did miss buying earlier, because we are still likely going to be starting the next step of the bull cycle here. But that does require a bit of a cool down period and actually retracing and confirming some longer term higher lows on this chart. Flipping over here into the shorter time chart right now, looking at the 4-hour, just want to talk about a few key things. Obviously, this double top of resistance, and then obviously now forming a new lower low, especially after coming off this very nice move after this flush. We thought things were looking pretty good in that instance. But one of the things that's extremely important to see here is that if we actually make a line right around the $14 level, then if we go ahead and zoom in, I do want to point out how this is an extremely relevant level, and we'll show you why here in a second. But not only did we get rejection and resistance, especially after we had flipped it into support, we had it as resistance previously. So 1 rejection, 2 rejections, flipped it into support, pulled back 1 rejection, 2 rejections. But if not only that on the 4-hour chart, if we actually look at some of the other longer charts too, so let's flip into the 2-day, for example, then you can see this line actually aligns perfectly with where we were seeing closing resistance on this 2-day chart. So a very effective and efficient point of resistance coming in right at the $14 level right now for ICP. So as you can see on this 2-day chart, just how many wicks we actually had of this above this $14 level. And then ultimately now, especially after kind of confirming 1 tops and 2 tops, starting to get a pullback. And that's kind of why right now we have this extremely big supportive zone all the way down to about the $10 psychological. But on this 2-day, we are looking to defend at close, pretty much right around the $12 psychological. Now I want to go ahead and clear this chart up a little bit and redraw the line pretty much right around the $10 psychological level, because if we actually look at this 2-day here and we do see a pullback and retracement, likely that'll also match up with this 26-period EMA on the 2-day. And we'll have a very nice price point for support if in fact we continue to pull back. Looking left, big point of resistance on that big consolidation zone for that 2-week period that we had before blasting up to the current trend high. So we know big point of resistance and rejection likely means on the downside, big point of support. So even if we do see about a week, we still could confirm this. But if we do lose the $10 psychological level on this chart, it will flip and we will reclaim it as resistance. and then probably head down to the 740 level like we had talked about before. If you are following me over on Twitter, we did talk about how we've seen the largest bearish 4-hour volume that we've seen in over a year. So we know that there's very much selling pressure coming in, especially after the ETF announcement. So we will see how far of a retracement we will be. I think ultimately I still would be not surprised to see Bitcoin retrace ultimately down to the $32,000 level over the course of the next coming months. Obviously, that's not a prediction, but what happens is that if that does end up playing out, then probably for altcoins, we will see significant sell-off and retracement, since usually they don't perform as well in terms of longer-term holding of some of those downside supports, and we do see losses start to sell off quite a bit more. Now, do want to finish off here looking at the 1-hour chart, because we have been in this pullback, and like we said, if we do break and find a new lower low, that will mean extended downtrend. Otherwise, we could be looking at a longer-term tightening range, which also would be extremely healthy for the market. But right now, one of the things to point out on this 1-hour chart is just how we have been seeing a decrease in peak amount of bearish selling candles that we have seen as well. But not only that, but the frequency and consistency for follow-through hasn't been as significant as we've already seen when we did find our current trend low right now. That was down to 1029. So as you can see, big, nice clumping and group in this instance and pullback. Saw an immediate V-shaped recovery, seeing these new higher highs, and then ultimately, like right now, leading to this tightening period. But we did break and find a new lower low recently. So trying to be able to defend and find some supports to the downside to hopefully come in. Likely, I would expect in this instance, if we do look left, support to come in down to about 1123. So I think in the event that of a downside target, that is what we would be looking at in that instance. So potentially from current prices down to that price point, about 7% to the downside. So I think that's probably going to be one of our most likely bearish scenarios right now if we don't get a little bit more of an oversold bounce first. If we do actually see a little bit of a bounce, we could ultimately test the current prices to see whether or not we will maintain them. If we do break this big point of support, then likely I would expect in that instance to see that retracement down to the current trend low, especially after coming in and setting some longer term lower highs. So overall, I hope this update has been pretty helpful and you did appreciate it and learn something from it. If you did, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe to stay updated on all future crypto content like this. Also, don't forget to drop a follow over on Twitter or X at @coin_trades is the handle over there. Make sure to post all questions, comments, issues, disagreements, all that stuff down below. Do love getting back to each and every one of you. That's going to do it for now, though, so stay safe, take care, and I'll catch you back in the next video.